Welcome back to Project Zomboid. Today we're going to be revisiting the CRYOGENIC Winter Challenge, one of my personal favorites. This time we're also going to be playing on a special map. The map's creator actually recommends that you play CRYOGENIC Winter with the map, so I thought it would be a good idea to use it here. We're about 30 seconds into the run and I've already found a shotgun in a box. I don't know if this is luck or part of the map, but either way it's pretty nice. It appears as if we've started in some kind of abandoned village. There's a lot of buildings here, but they're mainly empty. Zombie encounters were pretty few and far between at the start. Since I tend to go with high strength characters, I decided to add another mod which just makes zombies a lot tougher. In reality, it kinda nerfs all melee weapons, but it makes zombies last longer in combat. I walked down the street a little bit more and found myself inside a church. Being a church, it really doesn't have any decent loot. But at least it looked cool, so I decided to stop by. Despite the fact that all melee weapons deal less damage and have their crit chance reduced, taking out zombies was still pretty easy, and there were really few of them in this area. Eventually, after walking around a little bit more, I found a house that actually just seemed to be intact. The fact that this little village has so few zombies and has a wall around it makes it possibly one of the best spots for a base on the map. Speaking of maps, I decided to check mine. I looked around me to see what was nearby. I saw that just a little bit up north I would find a medical building of sorts. Judging by the size, it was probably a hospital. So I decided to get going. It was getting dark, but since I spawned in with camping gear, I figured it would be fine. Even if it got to nighttime, I could just camp out in the woods somewhere. Soon after exiting the town, I found this building. Not sure what it's supposed to be, but I promptly made my way in. It appears to be maybe some sort of school. Not a big one, but that's really the only explanation I can find for this room layout. Being a school, of course, it doesn't exactly have the most exciting loot. So I decided to get back on the road. The road on the way to the hospital wasn't exactly hard to traverse, but it kinda had a lot of zombies. They were just spread out. Instead of being in hordes, you would see like one zombie every few yards. Finally, I got past the T-junction and could start going upwards to the hospital. I didn't know what to expect, but I could already feel that there were a lot more zombies on this road than before. Soon after, I found myself at the hospital. For some reason, pretty much all the windows were barricaded, and all the zombies that I decided to ignore actually followed me over here. At first, it seemed manageable enough. There was only a few coming in, and I had sandbags to act as fences. Only after a while did I realize there were a ton of zombies behind me banging on their doors as well. and they were gonna break out at any moment. I don't know why I didn't decide to just run away and instead kept fighting here until those doors broke down, almost getting caught on a barrel while trying to run away. Didn't look like anything crazy, it was still a manageable amount of zombies, as long as I didn't get tripped and bitten. Finally, I got rid of the zombies outside and the ones that broke out. There were still a few banging on the other door, but it shouldn't be that many. Turns out I was absolutely incorrect and there were still a ton of them hiding behind that door. After clearing those zombies, I figured there would be a lot less of them in the building. Unfortunately, I was completely incorrect. I started fighting my way down this hallway to see what was at the end. Unfortunately, what was at the end was a ton of zombies. At first, it looked like 1 or 2. Then 2 became 3. 3 became 4, 4 turned into 8, 8 into 16, and before I knew it, I was basically completely overwhelmed in this hallway. Eventually I realized I wasn't gonna get out of here with normal combat, so I decided to pull out the shotgun I found earlier and to use the rounds. Maybe there were just enough zombies to take out with my bullets, and then I could take out what little remained with my hammers. Unfortunately, I was wrong again. Believe it or not, but letting off a sawed-off shotgun ring in the middle of a heavily populated area usually attracts more zombies than you're actually going to kill. At this point, I was getting chased by possibly 100 or so zombies from both sides. The shotgun shells being fired outside also alerted a ton of zombies around me. And when I ran out of shells, I realized that my only option was just to run away. I figured my best plan of action was going to be to run around and jump into... I figured the best plan of action was just to run around the building and jump in through the back. Then I'd close the window and shut the curtain and hope that any zombies just went outside with the shotgun shell sound. Eventually, I felt confident enough that I had lost them to start looking around. While I didn't really find anything of interest, I figured it would be safe enough to sleep here tonight, if I just found a nice sealed-off room to hide in. After about an hour of sitting here in this room, a thunderstorm set in. Now I was pretty much in complete darkness, except for when the thunder strikes illuminated the area around me. I figured I would be safe enough in this room until I realized one of the zombies actually broke down one of the window barricades, and before I knew it, there were quite a few of them entering. Most of which I couldn't even see because I could really only see ahead of me whenever the lightning would strike. After realizing I probably wasn't gonna get away with sleeping here, I decided to make my way out of the window and into the woods. Thankfully, part of my camping gear was a large flashlight, which would help me greatly to see the path ahead of me in this pitch-black night. Before leaving the hospital, I saw on my map that there was some kind of residential building up north. I decided to make my way to it. Soon enough, I found myself at the building I was looking for. It seemed to be some kind of large apartment, just randomly in the middle of the woods. All the windows appeared to be barricaded, so it seemed like maybe someone lived here before. As to why there was an apartment in the middle of the woods, I have no idea. It appeared to be completely barricaded on all sides, but there was some kind of small building in front of it. I figured if I couldn't get in, which I couldn't, I could just sleep there. A couple of zombies around me, but it was nothing that I couldn't manage. So I decided to quickly eliminate them before trying to set up a tent inside one of the little buildings. I closed the curtain behind me to make sure nobody could see me sleeping here and got ready to set up my tent. On day 2, I decided I would try to get into this apartment. After all, usually where there's survivors, there's good loot. It looked like the building was under construction, but it didn't really explain why it was in the middle of nowhere. Soon enough, I also found out you can just walk through these barricades for some reason. On one of the upper floors, I find some kind of a control room with a large ham radio and a couple of seeds. I don't really need seeds right now because they're probably not going to grow in the horrific temperatures, but it's good to know they're here. The building itself didn't really have any notable loot, so I decided to just get going. I saw on my map that a little bit far away from here there was another point of interest. It seemed to have a couple of different houses near it, so I decided to get going. I eventually find myself at what appeared to be some under construction houses. As to why they were left uncompleted, I don't know. Unfortunately for me, they also didn't appear to have really good loot in them. A couple of construction materials and some tools, but that was about it. Most of the houses were pretty much empty and didn't even have the furniture normal houses would have. Essentially, I found really nothing of value in the entire time I was here. Heading up north again, I find some kind of burned down farmhouse alongside a large garage. At first I thought the house was just burned down because the map maker decided to make it so, but apparently it wasn't, as when I started fighting the zombies around it, firefighter zombies started coming out of the building. While I was standing around and not paying attention, a zombie lunges me, trips me over, and I lose my weapons. Not only that, but I get hurt real bad, and suddenly my attack speed is greatly hindered. To make matters worse, I then get hit in the neck as well. At least it wasn't a bite, so I still had a chance as long as I could get away. I decided to simply run around the back of the garage so that I could bandage my arm and hopefully give myself a little bit of time to prepare. The zombies seem to have completely forgotten about me though, so I used this time to get into the house. Not only is this building residential, but it's also burnt down, meaning that pretty much any chance I had of finding any loot is kind of gone. Checking my map again, I see that way up there's a couple of industrial buildings. They're large enough to probably be warehouses or something, and it still appeared to be early enough. So I decided to get going. Worst case scenario, I still had camping gear I could use in order to sleep in the middle of the woods at night. After about an in-game hour or two, I found myself at the world border, which was pretty strange, but I knew I just had to follow this up in order to get to the warehouses. After enough walking, it starts to actually get dark and I pull out my flashlight. Thankfully for me, I find myself in some kind of abandoned campsite, with a cooler, some chips bags, and alcohol nearby. There were a couple of zombies guarding it, but I made quick work of them. The area seemed clear enough now that I could start working on fueling up this fire. After all, in cryogenic winter, having heat nearby is one of the most important things. Soon enough, I had camp all set up and was ready to go to bed. I just had to make sure there were no zombies around who were gonna jump scare me when I woke up. For a while, I just sat down in the rain. I was kind of praying that I would be able to dry off, maybe by standing near the fire, but it wasn't looking like it. So I decided to just spend a while waiting for my character to actually get tired enough to sleep. The pain from my wounds was currently preventing me from going to bed. Eventually I realized there was a beer next to me I could drink, somehow drinking it through my rebreather. All alcohol in Project Zomboid makes your character tired, which was great here because it was going to help me get to bed. And soon enough, and as the loading screen text says, that is how I died.